Welcome to Red and Yellow, the podcast about all things to do with refereeing at grassroots level, looking at the laws of football, speaking to guests, and trying to help you become a better referee, with Adam Humphreys and me, Ed Connell.
Hello, it's Adam here, and welcome to this episode of Red or Yellow. I just wanted to jump on here before the episode started to remind you to please send us in your questions about anything refereeing, and that way we can hopefully help you improve your game, as well as help all of the listeners improve their games as well. It's always nice to hear your opinions and views on things, so please send those in. You can do that via email, that's redorYellowpod@gmail.com, or find us on Instagram, it's at redorYellowpod. Added to that, if you would subscribe to the podcast, that would mean an awful lot to us. And then that way, our meandering chats about refereeing will magically appear on your phone whenever we release a new episode. And lastly, all views expressed on this podcast are that of myself, Adam Humphreys, and not that of Football Queensland. Now that's all done. Let's get on with the show. Welcome, Edward.
Oh, thank you. I thought, why are you welcoming me to my own podcast?
Because
it's very nice of you.
It's been a while since we've had a little chat, hasn't it?
It should be a case of, welcome back to our listeners who've been wondering where the hell we've been.
It should. Should we give some explanation?
I think it's always the same explanation, isn't it? Whenever we've been off air for ages.
No, normally the explanation is Edward's been on holiday.
Which I haven't been on holiday ever since we last recorded.
No, see, now our listeners are perturbed.
Well, I have actually. I was in Stockholm for one weekend. I was in Lisbon for another weekend.
Oh, of course, darling.
So I've been away. We've obviously not been recording for ages if I've been away on 2 holidays since. But
for those who are only listening and not watching the podcast, Ed has gone a very strange colour of red with embarrassment.
Well, we don't put out images of our recordings, do we?
No, I've stopped doing the TikToks for a while. I haven't done them in ages. Just haven't got the time to edit them. Yeah, and I've noticed go on.
Well, because you got married, then you went on your honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got a puppy.
I do. I have a dog. I have a Hugo.
And so you just don't have time for me and the listeners anymore, do you?
No, I have plenty of time for the recordings. I just don't have time for this painstaking editing that it takes. It's hard enough to just get the podcast itself edited, Ed.
And we're having recording this evening because we were exchanging messages this morning. I was sending you media links, and we properly decided that we ought to be recording again because it's been a while, and there's a lot to talk about in the news, really. So
there is.
We thought we'd record, and it's been a long day, and it's what is it now? It's not too late here. It must be pretty early there. Then what time is it there?
Well, luckily, that we've had daylight savings kick in, so now the time difference is 10 hours to the UK. So it's currently 20 past 6 a.m., which is quite a normal time for me to be up about and doing stuff.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, lovely. Right. So should we pick up with news?
Yeah, the news really, there's only one topic, it seems to me, that's been in the news.
It's depressing, isn't it?
It's depressing. And it's VAR. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to record this evening is because so much has happened about VAR, and it's a bit of a bugbear of mine that rather than sort of deal with it as part of the news section, I think what we'll do is we'll perhaps deal with some of the correspondence we've had since the last episode, and then we'll sort of delve into some of the recent VAR events, because it seems at the moment VAR is dominating the headlines.
All things.
The tweet, in fact, I sent you this morning was a quote from Henry Winter, or a tweet from Henry Winter, where he makes his observations about the impact it's having on the game. So that's really, I think, going to be the main focus of our discussions this evening. But in the last episode, we were asking people to send in some of their top tips
for new referees, wasn't it? Based on what that Swedish assistant or Swedish referee said that his top tips were.
Yeah, and so we asked the one we read out was that it was the Swedish referee Glenn Nyberg, who'd shared some advice online for referees or officials who are just starting out. And we asked some of our listeners if they had some top tips to share with us, if they could do. And we've picked from the post bag 2, haven't we?
We have indeed, yeah, that we thought were very good. One came via email, which is red or yellow pod@gmail.com if you want to get in touch via email. And one came through Instagram, which is @red-or-yellow-pod. So make sure you follow that if you're listening, and make sure you do get in touch with us. Just with anything, really. Like, for instance, a couple of days ago, one of our listeners in England, she had an observation from somebody who she really respected, and she was asking my advice on how to handle it and everything. We just had a back and forth for ages about it, which was really lovely. So it's always nice to be able to just chat with listeners and just answer questions and just hear opinions, and it's always nice. So please do follow us, and please do get in touch with us, and feel free to drop us a message. We do respond to everything, so that'd be awesome. So,
it's lovely when people get in touch, whether it be just to comment on things we've discussed in the podcast, to pose questions to us about particular things, to ask for advice, or to ask for advice generally from the refereeing community, or to ask us to cover any future topics and subjects. But yeah, it's always really nice to hear from you. Kind of makes us feel validated. So,
and draw our attention to things that are going on that we may not see, which is always fun. Yeah, it's nice.
Should we deal with Patrick, who got in touch with us on Instagram? That's one I think you picked out, and then I selected the email one. But Patrick Walsh, thank you for listening. Thanks for getting in touch with us.
Yeah, thanks for following.
Thanks for following. So Patrick, his first observation was don't ignore dissent, was his first piece of advice.
This is just a reminder, this is advice for like first-time referees, like your best pieces of advice as you go out. Don't ignore dissent. What are your views on that, Edward? I timed that question well, didn't I? Just as you're slugging some wine.
No, I do agree with that. But it's difficult sometimes because if you deal with every bit of dissent, it can often result in a lot of cars being issued. So I find it quite difficult to work out where to draw the line, and perhaps more importantly, when to draw the line, because you do get quite a lot of dissent in games, I think.
It depends on where you draw that line of dissent. Like, if you're going to think you're going to go out on card every time somebody disagrees with one of your decisions under the banner of dissent, you're going to have a very hard day. What I think is important is that you draw the lines clearly, and every game might have different lines as well. So like if you're doing a real local derby or like a semi-final in a cup game or something like that, like you have to allow a certain element of passion more than necessarily in a different game. Or the reverse might be true. You might need to slam the dissent quicker and harder compared to just a normal kind of Sunday league game. So and the problem you have is you can't establish those lines, like the battle lines, until you're in the middle of the game. You can't go in with a like preconception on how you're going to do it. What I would say is the one line you do need to draw with regards to dissent is a difference between frustration and dissent. And you need to know where you think a player has flipped from frustration into dissent. And I like the triggers for me with that are often things like volume of voice, aggression behind what he's saying or she's saying, aggression in terms of their body language, whether I think, and also a big one for me is whether I think the player will respond better to a card or whether they'll respond better to me having a chat with them. And that's the one that sometimes I can misjudge. Sometimes I think, I need to give this person a card and that's it, I've lost them for the whole game. Sometimes I'll be like, look, come on, mate, like you need to start working with me here. You can't be talking like that. We need to calm it down. Just nip it in the bud, please. And then suddenly they do it 30 seconds later. And then that's another key aspect for me with dissent is if it's repetitive in short spaces of time, then obviously he's not listening. If you're trying to work with them, that player's not listening to you, then just give them a card. Because often, if they're that kind of player, the card will shut them up. If it doesn't shut them up, it will make their team shut them up, which is also important.
But it is difficult because there is no sort of hard and fast rule on this. And it can be, as you've rightly pointed out, game specific. It can also be to do with sort of what you consider to be an appropriate tolerance level. That may be different for different people. Some people may be a bit more robust and less bothered about it. Other people may take a very sort of firm line on it. Can I just pose you a question? I was looking at, as you know, I follow lots, as you do, lots of the sort of referee discussions on things like Facebook, and people often pose questions there and spark a lot of debate. One that was posted yesterday, and I was really fascinated sort of reading it. The scenario was this: you're walking off at the end of the game, and the goalkeeper for one of the team that had lost, comes up to the referee and without, not in the hearing of anybody else, says, "All of your decisions were bloody awful tonight, every single one of them." And the question that was being posed was, what's your response to that? Yeah. So what's your response?
It's a question that is as wide as it is long, because one, it depends on your overall relationship with the player throughout the 90 minutes, right? Like, if he's been a player who's been working with you, he's been relatively quiet in the game, and he's just come up to you to air his opinion on what you did, but he does it respectfully and mindfully, he's entitled to his opinion. If he's been giving you crap all game and you said to him, right, just stop, I don't want to hear you anymore, and then he still comes up to you after you've blown a final whistle and has a dig at you, then you may well feel within your rights to give him a yellow card. I think if it's done respectfully and quietly, if it's done after the game and there's no chance of repercussions after he said that, I think I'd probably just stand there and say to him, well, at least I didn't let in 4 goals. See you later. And I'd walk away. But that's just me. I wouldn't advise you do that.
But it's interesting because there was a real broad spectrum of responses. And this is like the classic reason why refereeing is not straightforward.
It's not at all.
Because, here's a straightforward question, right? That you would think, given that there are laws of the game, there should be an answer to that question. It's dissent. It's still within your powers at that stage of the game to give a yellow card. But there were so many, the response was so broad. I mean, there was ranging from people saying things like, well, I'm quite sarcastic, so I'd have said something like well, if you're a better keeper, then you wouldn't have lost by 3 goals.
Well, exactly right.
Right. So there was a whole debate about, well, if it's not in the hearing of other people, it's not really dissent, which I didn't really follow.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either. And there's nothing in the laws. People were suggesting there was something that there was some criteria in the laws about what was, qualifies as dissent. There isn't. I mean, dissent is simply dissent by word or action. There's nothing else.
That's all it is.
It doesn't matter within whose hearing it is, other than yours.
I mean, there's also some of the guidance Football Queensland put out for sin bins is we use personal, public, and provocative. So personal is the dissent is specifically aimed at a match official, which I suppose you could argue this falls under.
Yeah.
Publicly and vocally disagreeing with a referee's decision to intentionally undermine their authority. Now, you could argue at the end of the game, do you still need do you need that level of authority at the end of a game? Possibly not, because I'll come to why possibly not in a moment. And then provocative, the dissenter utilizes language and gestures in a manner that is hurtful, inappropriate, or unsporting. Now, you could argue someone saying that to you at the end of the game ticks all 3 of those. What I would say about my point on authority is I think really in this situation that you're presenting, it's the end of the game. I think 9 times out of 10, I know I said I'd probably say, well, at least I didn't let 4 goals in, see you later. I probably wouldn't. In truth, I'd probably just stand my ground and just be like, all right, thanks, see you later. And I'd just close it down, shut him up. And I'd just say to my assistants, come on, let's go. There's no point in hanging around here. Because the longer we stand there, the more we're just going to open ourselves up to that. Let's just get off the pitch. And the sooner we're off the pitch, the less people are going to talk to us, the less people are going to be wound up. Let's just go. I don't need to shake anybody's hands. Let's just get out of here. And that's probably the better way. And then, it's all about refereeing is one of those things, and dealing with dissent is one of those things, in that it's all about reading the situation as quickly as you can. And in reading that situation, you take what you think is the best course of action for that particular moment. You're not always going to get it right, but sometimes the best course of action is to just run away. I remember in a FQPR1 fixture, like I missed a handball, and I had to just run away from the dissent that was ensuing, because one, I knew I'd missed something. I wasn't certain what, but I knew I'd missed something, and this handball led to a goal. And I was like, the thing is, if I stand there and try and argue the point, I'm only going to aggravate these players. Whereas if I let them just scream and shout for a little bit, but I run away, so I don't feel like it's directed at me because I'm not within the vicinity of their ability to aim it at me. They just look like they're being a bit silly, screaming and shouting at the pitch. I've got a lot of distance, and then it all calmed down, and for that moment, that was the easiest way to deal with it. Whereas a lot of referees would have probably gone in there going, oh, I can't have you be like this, like you need to calm down, and then you're just going to wind them up even more. So I think with dissent, a key aspect of it, depending on your style, but a key aspect with me is definitely am I going to be able to calm this moment down, or am I going to inflame it? And it's all about judging that. And 9 times out of 10, I can calm it down. Sometimes I get it wrong and I inflame it. And if I inflame it, then you obviously have to back yourself up with your decisions.
I agree with what you said, but it's interesting that a lot of people were quoting sort of the 3 Ps as though it were the laws of the game.
No, yeah, they're not. No, they're not. They're not. It's advice and guidance.
Useful guidance as to when it would or would not be appropriate. I mean, I'm a bit conflicted about this because, as you know, I really get irritated by comments being made that suggest you're either negligent or a cheat, right?
Yeah.
That or biased, because that really, really irritates me when people say that to me. But I think that in the circumstances, the sort of scenario I gave you, I think the reality is I probably would have said something sarcastic back and just left it. I don't think I'd have brandish cards. I mean, I just don't see the merit of that. Lots of people saying that if you don't take action, you make
it harder for the next guy,
the next ref.
Look, I don't think that's in that situation.
That a bit.
In that situation, I get it, but I don't think in that situation that's necessarily true, because the game is over and done with, right? And the goalkeeper clearly has an issue. The goalkeeper clearly has a personal issue with you. He doesn't have a personal issue with the next referee. He might find a personal issue with the next referee, but in this situation, he's clearly being personal towards you, and therefore it's up to your judgment. You could give him a yellow card. I just don't think I can't see how a yellow card would help you. If he was calm, he was quiet, and he was just giving his opinion. That happens, that's okay. And if you can't take criticism as a referee, then you're going to have a really long career, like a really frustrating career, because you have to be able to take criticism like that. And it sounds like to me he did it as respectfully as one can. And sometimes I actually think that needs credit. Like, we need to encourage that from players more. Like, yes, you can air your opinion. Yes, you can do it respectfully to me, and I will appreciate that. I don't agree with it, but I appreciate you've done it in a nice manner. Thank you very much. See you later. As opposed to just slamming him a card for giving him his opinion. That's just going to wind him up even more.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I sidetracked really from.
No, it was a good discussion. Dissent is a very difficult topic.
It's a really difficult one. But I as you say, I just found it fascinating. There was such a broad cross section of differing opinions as to what you should and shouldn't do, and I just thought that is the essence of the difficulty of refereeing.
Yeah.
In that you had 50 people, there must have been like 20 contrasting opinions as to how that individual would have dealt with it, and I just thought that kind of really encapsulated how difficult sometimes it is to be a referee. So Patrick's next one was, if it looks offside, blow it. Better give a bad offside than an offside goal. Now, I actually really agree with that as something that, especially when you look, again, drawing the distinction between our levels, me with sort of club refs, club assistants, the standard of which, as we all know, is variable, and there's often an element of bias and ineptitude. And I agree that your life is so difficult if you kind of and R over it, don't give it, and the goal is scored. It's just the worst feeling. It
Yep.
really is.
I think that's great advice at a grassroots level. Great
Yeah, I
advice.
do.
Like just encourage your assistants, club assistants, or low level assistants. Just encourage them greatly to just give the offside in terms of safety. Obviously, it's got to be tightish, but it's just much better. Like goals change games. You can't undo a goal, but an offside, no one's going to remember because nobody knows who was going to score that goal. So
exactly.
it's much better to stop the future from happening than it is to have to deal with the consequences of it being wrong.
And just be consistent, I'd say, doing that. And by that I mean, if you're going to give the benefit of the doubt to the defending team on those sorts of martial decisions, do it for both teams, and then everybody at least realizes you're being sort of fair. If you start overruling one of the club assistants and not the other, you just make a bit of a rod through him back, really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But no, I thought that was really, really sound advice actually for someone starting out in officiating. Yeah, the next one, Adam, you can do that one.
Get used to blowing your free kicks before getting adventurous using advantage. That's
what do you think about that?
Advice. I think it's very good. We all love a great advantage that leads to a goal, right? But we also
we all love that. It's the most rewarding thing when you
play
advantage.
Going back to the centre, what really winds me up about it is when I get no credit for it as well. It's I'll do it so often, like not so often, but I'm quite good at it. Like I probably had like 4 or 5 last season, and then the players will celebrate, and I'm like, why are you not thanking me? I gave you the advantage, and they all laugh.
I always say something.
I know. I
always say something. I can't resist it
because it's great officiating.
I gave
and
the
never
advantage.
Give you credit.
Yeah, exactly. No one ever comes up to you and says, "Great advantage, ref. Thank you very much."
I know.
They give you hell if you don't give them the advantage.
Exactly.
But never the other way around.
Interestingly, who do recognise it quite often is coaches. Coaches are often quite grateful for it, but that kind of gets lost because that you're in the middle of the pitch, right? Look, I think it's important that you recognise fouls, and also knowing where to play advantage is really important, and also knowing, like, sometimes if you don't know the clubs too well that you're officiating, it might be better to call the free kicks first and then start to look to play advantage. So maybe don't try and play advantage in the first sort of 5-10 minutes. Like you need to get a judge and a read of the game. How physical is the game going to be? If I let this one go, is that going to lead to this one being a bigger problem later down the track, especially in grassroots football, and when you're going to have different, very varying temperaments of players and very varying skill of players. So it might be better to just let everyone know that you have authority, that you're willing to call free kicks, that you're very much on top of the game. And then once you've established that, you can maybe start to loosen the leash a little bit and allow it to free flow a touch more.
I also think it's important as to where it happens on the pitch, because there is no merit in giving advantage to a foul that takes place as the defender playing out of defence, right? Yes, it might make the game run a bit more slickly because you're not taking it back. But I think there is a danger if you do that then it enters into the players' minds that you're kind of not stamping out or clamping down on sort of proper fouls. And I think if it's in that sort of part of the pitch where it's not going to lead to a goal, I'd be like, just blow up for the free kick.
Absolutely.
Don't be bothered with the advantage.
Well, you have to think about it as well in the sense that, what's the greatest advantage on a football field is the ability to score a goal. That's the only thing you need to look for, right? So obviously, as you progress towards the attacking goal, like your antenna for giving advantage has to be higher. You have to be looking for it more, because also the other thing you need to bear in mind is the player is more likely to have an advantage at that end of the field, because by giving an advantage in like the defending half, they've probably still got 10 players they've got to get through before they get anywhere. So where's the advantage in that? There isn't an advantage. So it's just about that. It's just about taking a wide angle view of the pitch and seeing what's around. And defenders love free kicks, and playing an advantage off an attacker onto a defender usually results in, if you don't get the first one, the second one will be worse. So just kill it. Calm the centre forward down, and then move on from there.
Yeah. His fourth tip is use common sense when it comes to foul throws.
Absolutely.
I very much agree with that.
That's a really good piece of advice. Good work, Patrick.
I mean, yeah, no, Patrick's got some great ideas here. I mean, listen, at grassroots level, there are always foul throws, right? In every game that I do,
every throw is a foul throw, pretty much.
Well, that's because most people don't understand, the law surrounding throw-ins. But I sometimes remark when I get sort of people moaning at me about it when I sort of don't call up a sort of foul throw. Is that crikey, if we're going to be calling up every foul throw, we're going to be here all night. I think I'm much more sensitive to it when it gets into the sort of attacking ends of the pitch, because again, you don't, if you sort of overlook what is a foul throw and then it leads to a goal, it's again, it just doesn't feel great. So I'm much more sensitive to it when we're into the area where it might impact upon the outcome of the game. But if defender in his own half is throwing it in and it kind of doesn't properly come from behind the head, or it looks as though his foot may have just come up as he is releasing it, I generally tend to let it go. I will though go and speak to the player immediately and have a word in their ear and say, look, this is what you did wrong, this is what you need to do, I'll call you up on it next time. And that generally tends to solve the problem. But that's kind of how I deal with it. I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
I think that's absolutely right. I wouldn't change anything there. Obviously, it depends on the level of game, but then obviously the higher level you're doing, the more likely they are to be able to throw the ball properly.
Well, you say that, but you see foul throws in the Prem pretty much every week as well, and they're never called up.
Yeah, but that's because you also have to ask yourself, who wants it?
I
know,
you said
like
I agree
at that level, they just want to play football. And if you're stopping play for a foul throw, like the thing that people are gonna start screaming at you at the high, especially at the higher levels, is it's not about you, ref. Or let's just get on with it. It's so frustrating and stuff. Unless it is egregious and obvious, and unless it's they're gaining a clear advantage, like in the attacking half, I think then you can be more sensitive to it.
Again, the counter argument to that though is that if it is one which is obvious and you don't call it out at the sort of very top level, it does make grassroots referees' job so much harder.
Yes.
Because if people are saying that Premiership refs don't give a monkeys whether it's whether it's foul throw or not, then why should we? But I get your point.
No, but I think your point as well is a greater problem with football in general, in the sense that players, coaches, referees, fans, spectators, the whole entire football community expect their games to be very similar, or like they have the same expectation of the Premier League, and they don't understand that it is just a completely different game at that level, because they've had no exposure to higher level football in their lives, and they don't understand that the nuances are just so very different at such a higher level. So that's what I'd say there. Like it's just not the same game throughout the pyramid, and nor should it be, and you have to treat everything differently.
And I love Patrick's fifth and final one, because this is something that I was told as well by when I sort of refereed with more senior people. He says, don't blow the whistle for obvious restarts. And I'm very much into that style of refereeing now. I think when I started, I think I blew the whistle for absolutely everything, and now, I use my voice a lot more. I don't blow the whistle when goals are scored. Just things like that, I think, are something you develop as you get more experience.
Yeah, I think one thing you have to be aware of is the way you sound as a referee as well. And so if all you're hearing is beep, 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 like all this, like people are going to think you're blowing your whistle a lot. So you need to be aware of how you're communicating, and your whistle is part of that communication. So definitely you just need to be very, very careful. And also, it's like anything, the more you use it, the less effective it becomes. So make sure you're going to save, the effectivity of your, is that a word? The efficacy of your communication for when you really need it, because that's when it's going to save you.
So that's Patrick's. Should we then go on to Jason? Jason, I hope I'm pronouncing your surname Nurmi?
Yeah, I think he's in the US as well, isn't he? I'm sure Jason's from the US, which is awesome.
Again, thank you for listening. Yeah. But he sent a very lovely message. He said, great job with the podcast, keep up the great work, and said, I always smile when I see a new episode pop up in my library. Well, he'll be
once
more delighted.
2 months.
Once every 2 months. But he'll be more delighted when he learns that we picked his correspondence to deal with. So he gives his top 5 tips for new grassroots referees. And his first point is do your homework, know the laws, and research local legal tournament rules and reporting requirements the day prior. Well, he's right about the knowing the laws bit. We've said that before, and I've sort of said before that I often refresh my memory of certain laws when I go to referee.
If only there was a podcast out there that
I know.
spoke about all of the laws to help educate referees on it. Can you think of something like that?
God, blimey, there's an idea for a podcast there, Adam.
That is, isn't it? I bet some referees are going to do it, and they're just going to steal our idea.
I think the thing about it is quite useful to remind yourself if there are any local league or, in particular, tournament rules. I'm not sure that the general laws vary from league to league, but some things might differ in terms of reporting and stuff like that.
Competition rules are really important. Some competitions do roll on, roll off subs. Some don't.
Okay.
Some cup games might you can have weird penalty rules as well. Like in the FA VARs, it always used to be. They might have changed it now, but it always used to be both teams have to agree to a penalty shootout as opposed to a replay before kickoff if you get to that point. So yeah, you do need to be aware of the different competition rules before you go and the consequences for it. Is a game going to be replayed? Do you go straight to penalties? Do you have extra time and penalties? Do you just have penalties?
Yeah, those things.
All those kinds of things. They are really
cups.
But the main one would be roll on, roll off substitutes. What's to go with that, and how you have to record them and report them.
Sim bins as well. The sim bins are on enforced as well. But certainly know the laws is a prerequisite. But
also many competitions have different law or different rules because they're competition rules, they're not laws, in relation to how many people can be in the bench and how many substitutes can be named and all this kind of stuff. So you do need to know that.
So that's good number 1 point. Second one, which is a really good one, arrive early, at least 30 minutes before kickoff to allow time for pre-game activities, pitch goal inspections, player inspections, check-in, do your stretches and your warm-up as well. That's really, and also to give you an opportunity, to give yourself an opportunity to introduce yourself to people as well, which, as he says, helps project confidence and humanises you. I just think from a sort of professional point of view, you don't want to be turning up late. The whole initial part sort of sets the tone for the day. And if you sort of turn up, it's about to kick off and you're sort of arriving and you've got to get yourself ready and you haven't checked the nets and you haven't checked equipment. It just gets you off on a bad footing.
Yeah.
And I think you should be aiming for more than 30 minutes to be perfect.
I agree. I think it's like, here we have an hour minimum. I ask my assistants, I say to my assistants, I'm getting there 90 minutes before kickoff. If you can arrive anywhere between 90 minutes and an hour, that'd be great. Just so we can get everything done. Like there's so much to get done. Like we have to set up communications. Obviously you don't have to worry about that, but we have to, you have to establish yourself. I love his point about introduce yourself to the coaches. It helps humanize you. That's so important, not just humanize yourself, but humanize them. Ask them what they've been up to today. Ask them if they're having a good day, if they've had a good season. It's such a great moment to get some good man-to-man management done with the players and with the coaches, but also to get some research done. Like, how you been playing recently? You've been having a good season? What's been going on? Yeah, who's been doing well? Who's not been doing well? All those kinds of questions you can have in that situation, and coaches love it.
You can also pick up some really useful information in just those sorts of casual chats. Just when the coaches may say to you, "Oh, this other team have got, had a really bad disciplinary record. Hope you're going to keep an eye out for that," or they're fighting for promotion, so they're going to be massively up for it. Just little things like that just give you a little bit of extra info.
And another one as well is they often come out and say things like, "Oh, the ref last week was awful," and then you can go, "Well, why? What gives you that opinion?" And you don't have to agree or disagree, but then you can get an insight into how they expect the referee to perform, and you can get a bit of inside knowledge. And if he's like, he blew his whistle for every goal and every restart, his name was Ed, and he didn't get around the pitch much, stuff like that, then at least what
There's
to
no,
do. Like
there's
you,
no need
you
to make
can
this personal, Adam.
you can get a free leg up. Like, okay, don't blow my whistle all the time for everything and move around the pitch more than Ed does. Great, that's an easy win. And automatically you're gonna be in their better books than their worse books.
Yeah, I also just think it sets the tone for the whole game, and I always think that someone who turns up has got themselves ready. They're done introductions. They're doing their stretches. They've checked the nets, and it's all like they're ready to go. Sort of 10 minutes before kickoff, they just impress you a bit more. And also, I just think that certainly in London, if you're just trying to arrive 30 minutes before a game starting, you are a hostage to fortune, because it just needs there to be a problem on a train or a tube or a bus, and then your plans have gone awry and you're sort of turning up 2 minutes before kickoff. So yeah, I think that even for grassroots stuff, I would say 30 minutes is perhaps cutting a bit fine, but his point is correct. Jason's getting it right when he says, look, you've got to be there early. That's the point he's really trying to make here.
Yeah.
Which is a good one. His next one is really not quite grassroots, but I understand his sense of discuss with assistant referees pre-game about expectations, teamwork, communication during the game, eye contact, body language, and stay together on all calls where practical. I suppose at an early stage you might be working with assistants, I suppose.
Well, what I'd say on that is that's good advice to even work with your clubbies, your club referees.
Yeah,
like, you want to discuss it with them about what you want them to do, your expectations. Like whenever I had them in the UK, I used to always say, I expect you to be in line if you're going to give an offside. If I look up and you're 20 yards back, I'm not giving the offside. We're just going to play through because you're not credible, and stuff like that. So I think the overall point about make sure you brief your assistant referees, I would also brief them in front of the team captains so they know what the expectation is a really good one. And then, and also make them feel like they're part of your team. Make them feel good about the job they're doing, because they're probably annoyed that they're a substitute and they've got to hold the flag for 45 minutes. So try and make them feel a part of your team as well. I think is really important there.
That's good advice. Number 4, a strong whistle projects confidence and authority.
But not for all restarts.
But not for all restarts. There we go. Thank you, Patrick, for that. I agree with that. It's, I think it's important to blow a whistle strongly. It kind of gives you your authority, as he says. But it's just as Patrick says, it doesn't have to be done all the time. There's a time and place when you need to blow the whistle, and tailor your behaviour accordingly, really. I don't think there's much more else to say about that. And number 5 is something which I know we're both obviously going to love, his 5th piece of advice, which is don't be silent. Talk to players, coaches during the game to keep things flowing, help avoid issues before they arise, avoid engaging directly spectators, and use the coaches if there's an issue. Well, we're both big fans of communication with all the participants, not just the players. But I think he's right about engaging directly with spectators. If you can avoid that, you should do, and engage the help of the bench to try and sort that out.
Yeah, absolutely right. I don't think much needs to be said on that, other than feel free to talk to players and coaches. Like that projects confidence, and it can aid your match control like you would not believe.
Yeah.
So definitely do it.
So we had other people write in with their advice as well, but obviously we couldn't do them all. But thank you those of you who did write in. And for anybody who thinks we've missed out any really key points out of the 10 we've just dealt with today, do send us a line. We'll try to add in 1 or 2 of them in the future when we get a chance.
Yeah, it's always nice to get that advice.
Yeah. So should we talk about the news and more particularly the mess that is VAR?
Do we have to?
Well, I mean...
No, I know we do. Yes, we should.
This is the sort of the hottest topic in football at the moment.
It's the only thing I ever see about refereeing at the minute. Like I can't say I've noticed anything, and it's really annoying because it's undermining it's undermining all the good things that referees do because it's just so dominant at the moment.
On the topic of undermining referees, can I just read out the tweet that I sent you this morning, which is
From Henry.
Prompt us to get online this evening.
Henry Winter is a Times journalist, is he?
Yeah, I think
he's a chief football writer. He's very respected, and I think he's excellent. He's on the BBC a lot.
I think he's fantastic. He is the chief football writer for the Times.
There we go.
And a man with some influence, 1.3 million followers on Twitter.
Do you remember Sunday Supplement on Sky Sports?
Yes, I do.
He used to be on that a lot, and he was phenomenal. He was always phenomenal on that. I loved that show. That's where I first came across him, and he always spoke with authority and respect, knowledge, understanding.
Yeah, I find it very, very rare that he writes or tweets about anything that I fundamentally disagree with, and I always think he has he's obviously very insightful, knows the game of football exceptionally well. Anyway, his comments were as a result of the Fulham Wolves game last night. And he says this: Fulham Wolves was a terrific game. Both teams going for it. Two good managers, full house, televised. And yet it's all overshadowed by some poor, weak officiating and some muddle-headed VAR interventions. Some refs look bereft of confidence, lacking the courage of their convictions, just worrying about Stockley Park watching. And for the good of the game, the FA, PGMOL, the referees' professional body, should be working more with managers to improve VAR. The Wolves manager was very emotional in his comments, but he had every reason to be frustrated. Again, quote, "You can send me flowers, you can ring me to apologise, you can do what you want, but we should be on 22 points instead of 15. The difference between 22 points and 15 for the thousands of supporters who follow this team around the country is huge. The difference between 22 and 15 on my reputation when you're trying to build at a club, big club, is irreparable." And he said, "O'Neill's doing brilliantly at Wolves, but he'll be judged ultimately by league position. Will the owners remember these rubbish VAR calls? O'Neill's being let down by VAR. The game's being let down. Honest players are being let down. Vinicius only got only yellow for headbutting Kilman." And O'Neill then said, "The ref said it was a soft headbutt. I said, that's absolutely crazy. So my son at home watching, or millions of children watching that, would tell them we can headbutt people on a football pitch as long as it's deemed soft. VAR is here to stay, so let's try and get it right." Well, I mean, you can't really put it much better than that, can you, in terms of the state of the game as it is at the moment? VAR is a mess. I just don't know where to begin, Adam. I mean, what is the way forward?
I think I've been thinking about this a lot. I think the way forward is, at the minute, tell me if I'm wrong, but at the minute it seems to me like VAR decide when to come into a game. So if they've seen something, or if they think there might be an offside, or something, they tell the referee, "We're checking, we're coming in, we're doing this," right? So they kind of they inject themselves into the game. Now, when you look at other sports, i.e. cricket, i.e. tennis, i.e. rugby,
in fact. Yeah.
The person who has the authority to check in NRL, the bunker they call it, or a Hawkeye or whatever it might be, is the on court, on field, on pitch official.
Yeah.
And I think this is the crux of the issue. Now, I know football is a fast game. I know we want to try and get it as accurate as possible with factual things like offside and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think we need to have the referee asking for clarification as opposed to VAR jumping in with 2 feet into the game. Because you sent me that clip of Michael Oliver, didn't you? Was that the Chelsea Spurs game?
That was the Chelsea Spurs game. I sent you the reason why I sent you it was that decision whereby Chelsea scored in open play, but it was flagged for offside, right?
Yep.
And so they go back to look at the offside, and then they go, but actually there's
a penalty decision before that.
There's a penalty decision before that, and my bugbear of the whole thing was, and the reason why I sent it to you is because it took forever, and I just can't believe that we ever want to find ourselves in this position whereby, first of all, they spent an eternity drawing the lines. Okay, is it there? Is it on the shoulder? No, a bit lower. No, there we go. Is hip or is it no? It's hip. Right. And I just think, well, my personal viewpoint is I'm not. I know that Arsene Wenger's got his plans on offside, and I think that's being introduced for next year, isn't it?
I've got no idea. I've got no idea.
Wenger basically says that if there's any part of the body that's still in line, unless you're sort of beyond the player, you play on
daylight.
The
daylight.
Daylight. So that I think that's coming in next year. I'm not sure I'd subscribe to that. But what I don't want to do is spend 2 minutes, 3 minutes, arbitrarily drawing lines so that we can decide whether by the narrowest of margins whether something is technically offside or not. I don't think anybody wanted that when VAR was introduced.
I think the time it takes is obviously an issue, but that's not my issue with that situation. My issue with that situation is I never want to get into a position where I'm like having to go at referees, right? It seems to me like this is across the board, and the referee in that game is just an example of the issue that is now endemic in the Premier League. And it seems to me like they're not making decisions that they would have made 2-3 seasons ago, simply because they know that they can play the phase through and then have the phase completely checked after. And that undermines like, and it's no wonder like Henry Winter, and I've been saying it for a long time, is it just feels like they've all lost confidence in their ability to call a foul.
I agree more.
Like, I mean, the kick that happens in the penalty area in that game is
the foul that was the penalty.
The foul was the penalty that then led to like, and the thing is also VAR. If VAR had looked at the penalty first before the offside, they wouldn't have wasted all the time looking at the offside. They'd gone, that's a Stonewall penalty. Just give the penalty. Like, there we go. Or play the advantage through for the goal, and then they could have checked it was offside, so then it doesn't matter, right? But anyway, it's a penalty. Like, and the fact that Michael Oliver didn't call it is the bit that worries me the most, because 3-4 seasons ago he would have called that every day of the week. Everyone would have called that.
It's a straightforward.
You can't have an easier penalty to give. You can't. No. You just can't have an easier penalty to give. And so I just don't understand why the referees are not calling the things that they are trained to call, that they're very good at calling. We're talking about one of the best referees in the world here, and the other issue I think as well that we've got is they're also learning on the job. They are primed, very able referees. They've been doing this, some of them, for 25 years of their lives, and they are now at the top of their game. And what they are used to doing is getting big calls in big situations like that correct. That is why they're on the Premier League, not doing like the level I do, because they have that ability and they can stick to it, they can see it through, and they can manage an event like that very, very well. Now we have this kind of big brother overlooking everything, and suddenly they whether they've lost their ability to call it because they're low on confidence, whether they're being told not to and to play a phase through and then have it checked after, I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but I'm sorry, referees don't lose that ability that quickly, especially referees who are still refereeing. So it must come down to a administrative thing that they're being told to do in the game. And I think that is what's undermining everything at the moment.
But that's the fundamental problem. It's really undermining referees generally, because
it's undermining what referees do best. The reason I'm a referee and I'm not a player is because I can tell you when you need a red card, and I can do it with respect, authority, understanding, man management, etc., etc. I can't kick a ball very well. This is what I do best. Now, if I knew, like, for instance, let's just say when you have an observer at a game, a match day coach at a game, and you're being assessed, right? Now, we have all been in that situation and we all amend our game because of it, don't we? Right? We just do. I mean, I probably do it a lot less now than I used to, but back in the day when there's more pressure on it, I would amend my game slightly. I may punish the penal a little bit more. I may do someone for dissent if you spoke to me like that after the game as opposed to before the game, because you want to show that you know your laws, and you feel like that person overlooking you've got to hold a different kind of level for that. And it does take away your talent a little bit, because you're kind of playing into their hands as opposed to managing the game in the best way possible. And it feels to me like that's kind of what they're all doing all of the time now. They've got this juggernaut on top of them, and they're all amending their game as they go, because they feel like they have to, because it's there, and they're trying to balance off this VAR thing, whatever you want to call it, this VAR thing. They're like judging that off with their performance on the pitch, and they've just lost the confidence to perform.
And do you think that the VAR officials should be drawn from the sort of general pool as they are at the moment of sort of referees, or should it be, as they've just indicated, they're going to start recruiting for people to be VAR officials? I mean, I don't know what the answer is really.
I think that's I don't think it really matters. What I would say is we have specialist assistant referees. So having specialist video assistant referees would probably be a good idea. What I would also say is the brief we give to assistant referees, and I'm pretty sure it's very similar all the way up the chain now, like where I'm at in the game. I don't think FIFA assistants get much of a different brief to what I give, having been briefed as an assistant by FIFA officials, in the sense that, like, I want you to work with me on this. We go together on this. We think about this. We'll discuss it, and then we'll come to a decision together. We'll take our time. We'll understand it. Now, like, you're not giving your AR, other than in exceptional circumstances, like that much authority to insert themselves into the game, because if you did, it would undermine your authority as a referee. So why are we letting VAR do that role? It's an assistant referee, but it feels in so many situations like they are now the referee, and the person in the middle of the field is basically refereeing by proxy. And that's why they have no confidence.
But the other problem I've got as well is that when VAR is getting involved, it's not always sort of getting it right. There's just such inconsistency about how the laws are being applied when VAR gets involved. So the classic example was the Arsenal-Newcastle game, right? There was so much going on in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but there was the sort of...
I remember it very well. We had many debates about it.
After the ball had gone, the Newcastle player who elbows
in the head.
I think was it Rice in the head, right? And the response was, because I think VAR is one of those cases where sort of VAR released some sort of information after the game, didn't there, as to the decision-making process.
I don't know, but yeah.
Something which I keep saying, we should be having this transparent audio feed anyway. I genuinely believe that should happen. But the explanation was, it was not the use of the... I can't remember. It wasn't the use of the elbow.
It was the forearm, not the elbow, or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, what on earth's that got to do anything? I mean,
have you ever been hit?
Decision.
Yeah. Have you ever been hit in the head by a forearm?
I don't think I'd give a jot of difference if I was hit in the head with an elbow or with someone's forearm.
I've been hit in the head.
If they hit me in the head in a off the ball instant, that, I'm afraid to say, is a red card.
Concussion is concussion. What happened in that game as well is the referee started second guessing calls that he probably shouldn't have been. VAR then started second guessing calls that he probably shouldn't have been, and then we ended up on this double track of both systems not talking to each other, not being on the same page for the level of game that was needed, and then both were kind of doing their own thing, and it ended up in absolute carnage. I mean,
that game was a mess, I'm afraid to say. From a sort of officiating perspective, it was a mess. I mean, there's the whole thing about... I'm not sure what's going on with the referees. Well, I don't know whether you think the referees get influenced by a home crowd, but there's no doubt that Newcastle's home is a tough place to go to, I think, as a football player.
St James's Park.
St James's Park has become a really, really difficult place, I think, for away teams to go. The atmosphere is kind of incredible. It's pretty oppressive. I don't know whether that plays a part, but
that wouldn't play a part with VAR, because VAR are in a box outside the stadium.
It shouldn't do. But Havertz had lost his head. He went in with challenges.
I mean, that was to say that wasn't a red card is amazing to me.
Then was the forearm incident I've talked about, and then of course there's that whole debacle about the goal and
the push in the back.
The push in the back, and we had an example this weekend when this is the difficulty. I think it was the Liverpool game this weekend. I can't remember. Might be wrong about that, but that's right. There was a push, I think, on Alisson, which was less of a push than the one in the Arsenal-Newcastle game,
and
which was given as a foul. And of course, then the referees are subject to mockery on social media because everyone's saying, "Oh, if you pushed him harder, it wouldn't have been a foul." I mean,
the judgment of referee to referee, game to game. I don't like that debate. I think every referee judges things like that differently. You can't say that X referee didn't judge it a push, B referee did judge it a push, therefore X referee was wrong. That's just the subjective nature of refereeing. The one thing we can both agree on is a push like that in the back is a push like that in the back, and it's probably a foul everywhere else on the pitch. But again, that gets called if VAR are on the same track as the referee and they're both working together with confidence. That gets called as a foul. Havertz gets called as a foul, as a red card foul. Jorginho, forearm, gets called as a foul. But the thing is both systems, the referee on the field being the system and the team on the field, VAR being a system, they're just not working through a game in a manner that is together. Like, teamwork is so important, and it just feels like the right hand's not talking to the left hand at the moment, and that's where it's coming from. And the only way in which I think you can readjust that is giving the referee on the field the authority to ask for VAR to review something, as opposed to having them inject themselves into the referee's mind and decision making.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the damage that's being done to refereeing generally at the moment is the biggest concern to me,
because all this is doing is highlighting mistakes. All we're doing is talking about referee mistakes. We're two referees on the side of referees, and all we're doing is talking about referee mistakes.
I know, and that's a problem for all of us, because if the general public are looking at the very best people in the land who are referees getting it wrong, or inconsistencies, or laws not being applied in the same way in every game, overlooking, because it was a forearm rather than an elbow, people pushing people and goals being given, it just makes the job of every single referee so much more difficult. And the referee brand is being damaged by this whole VAR debacle. So listen, it's very easy for us to sit here and say it's a mess. But what's the solution? I mean, what would you say is the way forward?
The referee needs the ability to review, as opposed to VAR telling them, we need to look at this, we need to go into it, we're going to do it. And I think the parameters for review need to come down greatly. That's what I would say. I think you need to re-inspire the referee's confidence and authority. And that's the most important thing. And I think VAR needs to be treated like an assistant referee, as opposed to a kind of parallel referee at the moment. I think that's the issue. And I know there's some situations where referees do revert back to VAR, like, can you have a look at this? But I think that they're not the decisions that we're worried about and we're talking about and that are causing problems. So I think that needs to be the default. That's the only way around it I can see. And I think it should only be for red card tackles and penalties. Like, that's probably about it.
My two things, which will come to no surprise to everybody who's listened to us debate this before, is I don't think VAR should be looking at offsides anymore.
It takes too long. It's too subjective.
It takes too long. It's too arbitrary. The technology, I think, is still questionable in terms of frames per second and the movement of the ball. we've said before that the statistics on the rate at which assistant referees get things right in terms of offside decisions is very high. I'm personally prepared to live with the fact that we stick with the assistant referee's decision, and there will on occasion be an error, and there will
The
on
thing
occasion
is,
be a bad error.
the
But
thing is
I'm prepared for that.
the thing is, we're all subscribed in football to the knowledge that a referee might make a mistake. And then the idea of VAR is that it eliminates that prospect, yet mistakes are still happening. So the
Absolutely.
whole premise of football, the whole thing that we're bought into with football as fans, as people, as humans, is we was told that was going to be eradicated. And now it's just like exasperated the fact that mistakes happen. So now we're spending 4 or 5 minutes a game highlighting the potential for a mistake to happen of the referee, whereas in an actual game it'd be whistle, blow, bang, free kick, let's go, whistle, bang, red card, let's go, and we move on so much quicker. But we're all spending 3 minutes anxious going, oh God, what's going to happen? Oh my goodness, how are they going to do that? Everyone gets to see it, and then everyone forms another opinion on top of that and then disagrees with the opinion that comes through. Like, it's just, this is my decision. It's done. See you later. Final. It's no longer is basically the battle lines drawn for refereeing, and that's no longer the case.
The automatic offside that we had in sort of the Euros, which the Premier League did not want to implement this season, which I think is enforced in some European leagues, I think would make things better because it's much quicker. But I'm literally at my breaking point now with offside decisions and VAR and the way in which the lines be drawn. It just takes too long, and if we're having to do that, it's just not cleared. Obviously, I forget about it. I also, and I'm going to say it again, I just think that transparency would be so much better. I love how in rugby we hear the refs are mic'd up, we hear the discussions taking place, everybody understands what's happening. I don't understand what the difficulty is in doing the same thing in football. If people are being professional, doing their job properly, there should be no reason why they would,
I disagree with that.
Afraid to hear people here.
I think
I know we have different views on that.
Football's a much faster game, so it's harder.
I agree. I know.
And I think there's a lot more scrutiny on football as well. A lot more scrutiny. And I mean, at the end of the day, let's face it, in rugby, players call the referee sir to a man non-stop.
Yeah.
Or, sir, can we have this? Sir, what was that? Sir, what's this? Football, you're just not going to get that. You're just, and it's going to expose, it would let a cat out of the worm, what's the phrase? The cat out of the box, out of the bag, that's the one. Out of the bag, just, and once that's out, it will never go back in. I agree with transparency. I agree with discussing things through. I agree with, the FA and the PGMOL coming out and saying, on the day we got this wrong, we got this wrong, we got this wrong.
Yeah, but
we got this right, we got this right, we got this right.
That isn't good enough. The transparency afterwards and issuing apologies, right, as Henry Winter says, is cold comfort to a manager that the difference of 6 points might end up with him losing his job and staying in his job.
I'm not saying, but I don't see how revealing all what a referee is saying to players and his own team in a game, I don't see how that stops that from happening.
No, but you're saying about the transparency,
No, I think it's helpful. I'm not saying it's the solution. I think the solution is allowing referees to go back to refereeing their games themselves because that's what they do best.
Anyway, there we go. I know it's a frequent topic of conversation for us, but quite frankly, it's a frequent topic of conversation for pretty much every football armchair fan and journalist in the country at the moment. And I wish it weren't so.
I'd be really interested to see what our listeners think on it as well.
Yeah,
like, what's your view on it? Like, there has to be a solution somewhere, I suppose. What do you want to see happen? It's not going to get scrapped because nothing ever goes backwards in football. So yeah, and I have no experience with VAR. I don't talk to many people who do have experience with VAR, but it'd be really interesting if anyone is listening to this who has experience working with VAR to just give us an insight in how it works with the team. Like, you're the referee, VAR's there as well. How do you communicate team-wise? How do you get a decision reviewed? Do you have that right? Do you think it would help if you had that right? Although, having said that, anyone who's currently working with VAR will obviously be, subject to not being able to discuss these things that openly. So I appreciate that. But I think all those questions would be interesting to find out.
Yeah, and as Henry says, listen, I think the reality is VAR is here to stay. It's not going, despite what my views are. And so
You don't have that much influence, Ed. Are you kidding me?
No, I know. It's annoying, but it would be good to have our listeners sort of give us their views, because we might be sort of speaking the vacuum. There may be other people out there that think it's all working well and it's not so bad. But so do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. And that, Adam, I think is about it for this week.
I think it is. No fun facts, which our listeners will be pleased to hear.
Well, my fun facts are normally based around the laws of the game, which we still haven't finished.
Oh, but, we had that discussion about the throw-in in the top 5 things. I'm pretty sure throw-in's our next law. So we had a segue. Some fun facts. About a throw-in.
I'll try and find some fun facts for throw-ins.
Crikey. Great.
It's going to be a job and a half. Right. Well, lovely to see you, Adam.
Likewise.
And let's not leave it so long next time.
Please, darling.
And good luck with the puppy.
Thanks. Oh, I've got a fitness test coming up soon as well, so I need luck for that as well. Send me your best wishes, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm refereeing on Saturday, so next time we chat, I can tell you how that went as well.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Cool. That's awesome.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. See you nice. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode of Red or Yellow. You're clearly a very fit listener. May I gently remind you to like and subscribe to the podcast in your podcast app. That way, when we release a new episode, our meandering chats will magically appear on your phone. Don't forget, you can get 10% off any refereeing equipment that you might need. If you're in Australia, head to processports.com, and if you're in the UK, head to therefereestore.co.uk. And then just use the code RedOrYellow10 at checkout. Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to follow us on social media. It's at Red or Yellow Pod. And don't forget to send in your questions. We cannot wait to speak to you again very, very soon. Ciao, ciao.